Hi, welcome back to another live question period with David Krayden. I'm your host. Thanks for joining me again today. Hey, we had a great time yesterday, didn't we? And I want to thank everybody for subscribing, of those who did. We have surpassed the 25,000 mark. I've been wanting to do that for months. It really makes me feel like I've entered a new stage of this new media business here. And believe me, it's become very much a part of my livelihood and my life, and so have all of you. Thank you for watching this broadcast, this live broadcast today, and all the broadcasts I do about the issues that you care about. We're going to be talking more about the World Health Organization before we go to question period this morning. I always have 5 or 10 minutes before. And as I reported yesterday, Dr. Tedros, and he's not a real doctor. No, he's a PhD. And I don't know where he got his PhD from, his doctorate. I won't comment any further about that. Could get into trouble. However, Tedros has admitted who could not do it. They could not push their agenda on the world, not because the governments of the world were so careful or so cautious or so unwilling to be trampled over by the globalists, but because people like you and I were out there fighting the globalists. We did it. We did it. It's our victory. So I want you to watch what Tedros says. And you know what? The story about the failure of the WHO has only been reported by Gateway Pundit, Breitbart, and I believe myself. And I haven't even got a story up on the Post Millennial. I assume they already got this story. I usually just cover the Canadian side of the news, occasionally do a U.S. story. I do a lot of U.S. news for my column at Human Events, which is associated with the Post Millennial. But I usually leave the U.S. news to other reporters. And I don't think they've gotten the story yet. So I'm going to have to see if I can follow up with the Post Millennial on the story because there's very few media outlets have got this. But watch how Tedros has responded.
Also at the Assembly, WHO will be launching a new global health strategy, developed in partnership with 194 member states and partners, which sets a course for getting the world back on track to hit the health-related sustainable development goals. Crucial decisions are expected on a range of health priorities such as climate and health, WHO's work in health emergencies, access to transformative tools, communicable diseases, non-communicable diseases, mental health, women's health, and the reform of WHO itself. On 26 May, WHO will be launching our first investment round, a new mechanism for WHO, which the Executive Board approved in January. The investment round is designed to ensure that voluntary contributions, which are currently the majority of our funding, will be more predictable, flexible, and sustainable. Our new investment case outlines why and how supporting WHO is essential for progress in global health and saving millions of lives. It will be launched on 28 May during the Assembly.
So they're not done yet, folks. They're regrouping. They're preparing to attack again. They were unsuccessful with their pandemic agreement. And you may recall that they had to water it down because there was such opposition. And even the UK said, no, we don't think we can go with this because of the sovereignty issue. Not because they don't love the United Nations and they don't love the World Health Organization, but they really were having qualms about the sovereignty issue. Now, once again, I will emphasize that we've heard nothing from Canada about this. So thank God the WHO collapsed over it because Justin Trudeau would have signed this, and there was absolutely nothing being said from the official opposition. So it looks like we're safe for the meantime, but watch them. Watch what they're going to do in the future. Now, this is the Gateway Pundit. WHO Global Pandemic Treaty fails after 2 years of negotiation. Commie Chief says he will try everything to reach fresh agreement. You bet he will. This Tedros is dangerous. If you just read his biography, and not the official one, but look this guy up in terms of where he's been in his life. And it really is, he is a complete sham. He's in the pay of the Chinese. He made the World Health Organization an appendage of China since he's been there. He is receiving all kinds of favors from China. And this is what it's all about with him. So Tedros, when he says that the World Health Organization is helping to save the lives of millions, no. They did all they could to take away the lives of millions. I'm going to put my glasses on for this one. No, I can't. CTV News. WHO Chief Tedros confident of eventual pandemic treaty. This is how the world was reporting this. Reuters, PBS. These are all news sources that had no idea the treaty wasn't going to go through. And they were all reporting that smooth sailing for Dr. Tedros. Everything's fine for Dr. Tedros. World Health Organization is going to get its way. Well, folks, it didn't happen. And we can thank God for that. And we can thank people like you and I who fought this thing. But I find it amazing that this has been so underreported. Why? Because it's a defeat for the United Nations, for the globalists. It's a defeat. They have gone down. And yeah, they're going to come back again with more authoritarian efforts, more attempts to take away your individual freedom, with more crazy schemes as to how they can do this. And you watch. When the next pandemic comes, and you know it's going to be the bird flu, they will do whatever they can to usurp the authority of sovereign nations and to take over the lives of individuals. God only knows what's happening with that bird flu. I have heard reports that this Dr. Tam, this woman who took all of her talking points from the communist Chinese during the last pandemic, who is our top health officer, the national health officer in Canada, has been meeting with her provincial counterparts on how to sell and market the bird flu as another horrible pandemic that needs the same kind of authoritarian lockdowns and mandates. Forget it. Not going to happen. We've been through this before. We understood and we learned you can beat the government and you can say no. This same liberal government that likes to spout off all the time about it's a woman's right to choose her body, let them know that it's your body and you make a decision about vaccines and about what you're going to put in it and about how far you're going to distance and what kind of mask you're going to put on your face so you don't have to breathe in your own carbon dioxide all day. Yeah, if you've got the freedom of choice, like this liberal government loves to spout off about, then we're going to exercise that freedom of choice if and when this next pandemic comes around. But I tell you, I am sick of these scare tactics. I'm sick of this fear mongering. I'm sick of being told how to live and how to behave and how to walk around and how to sit down in restaurants and how to deal with my fellow neighbors and humans. We're not going to put up with it. I lost a sister to the pandemic vaccine. She got it because she thought she was making my mother safer in a nursing home. Heather passed away in November, and I'm still dealing with that. That made the potential risk of this vaccine real to me, very real. That's all I'm going to say about this now. We're going to go to question period. Hopefully, we'll get some real questions today about other issues that are important, such as digital ID. Yes. Do you ever hear about digital ID coming from the government? Or how about digital currency? Do you ever hear about that coming from the Liberal government or the opposition? Does it ever get mentioned in question period? No, but it's on the horizon. You know it's on the horizon. They want to get rid of cash, and they want to get rid of the current banking system. So let's make sure these questions start to get answered. All right, I'm going to go to question period now. Let's have some fun today. I will comment as required. I'll try not to interrupt when important matters are being discussed or when important people are up, but I will if the block gets up. Because I don't have time for the blockheads unless they're saying something that's really profound, which is extremely rare, because all they want to talk about is how the French language is being mistreated across the country and in Quebec. And all they want to talk about are issues that are only pertinent to their province. This is a federal parliament, and we should be talking about national issues and issues of relevance to all Canadians, not just those from Quebec. So sometimes I will interject when the block members get up. Thanks for watching today, and let's get on to question period.
More obvious just how out of touch the NDP Liberal government is. After 9 years of this Prime Minister's high spending and tax hikes, Canadians can barely afford the necessities. And that doesn't matter to the NDP Liberals, who want to hike the carbon tax by 23%, and they want to keep on raising it year after year. Only Conservatives understand that Canadians need a break. With summer approaching, people are trying to make plans to go out and see all the wonderful destinations that we have to offer in Southwest Saskatchewan. Places like the Jean-Louis Laguerre Regional Park in Willowbunch, or the Great Sandhills in Leader, or maybe Harvest Eatery in Shaunavon. That's why this summer we're calling for the removal of the carbon tax, the federal fuel tax, and the GST on gasoline and diesel until Labor Day. An average of 35 cents a litre taken off of gas prices would save Saskatchewan families up to $850 this summer. But even if the NDP Liberals refuse to support this common sense initiative, Canadians can be ensured that after they vote in the carbon tax election, Conservatives will remove the carbon tax for good. Yeah!
The honourable member from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 4 women put their names forward to run for the Conservative nomination in my riding of Aurora, Oak Ridges, and Richmond Hill. And you know what? None of these women made it onto yesterday's ballot, but 2 men did. Really. This example is not the exception. It demonstrates a lack of support for women and women's rights throughout the Conservative Party. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Recently, we saw the chairperson on the Standing Committee of Status of Women summarily removed by the Conservative leader.
There they go again.
Too strong, and anti-choice caucus members. One who recently
there they go again. The Conservatives are going to completely overhaul the abortion law in this country, which, of course, is a complete fallacy.
Appalling. And their leader refuses to answer questions or make a commitment to
maybe they should, but they're not going to.
Abortion, instead pointing to a written statement. Not good enough. Canadian women deserve a leader who doesn't just make hollow statements. We need and deserve a leader that proactively supports. Luckily, we have that leader and that party. Thank you to our Prime Minister.
No, Autumn Christian. I have a recording of Dr. Tam talking to Dr. Bonnie Henry about how they're going to sell the next pandemic. And Bonnie Henry actually goes on and on. I'm just going to shut her down for a second here. Bonnie Henry goes on and on about how in BC they shut down the mink farms during the pandemic and how that was such a wonderful thing. And she actually gleefully tells the story. And Dr. Tam says, how wonderful. These people are crazy. Of course, Dr. Henry is the one who's basically a drug kingpin in BC. It's all safe drugs if the government gives them to you.
Positive change. Women account for only 30% of those elected to Parliament. Today, I call on all members of this House to challenge existing
Don't talk about a quota system for Parliament, please.
Lift up women and gender-diverse individuals taking on vital roles in politics.
No, if there's 30% women in the House of Commons, that's fine. If that's how many women were elected, that's fine. If 50% are elected, that's fine. But don't try to foist your numbers on us.
The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, Sainte-Thérèse will be celebrating its 175th anniversary this year. It is a town of arts and culture. It was founded in 1849 and has always cared deeply about these fields. It has a piano making factory and quite a number of festivals. It also cares about education and the media. For example, the newspaper Voix des Midi was founded there in 1937. And in 1967, the Sainte-Thérèse Seminary was converted into Lionel Groulx College. Sainte-Thérèse is also proudly represented by many community organizations and local small businesses, which are part of the warp and weft of this community. I would like to congratulate all those who have contributed to Sainte-Thérèse. It is a unique and exceptional place. Happy 175th birthday.
Oh, he's leaving it. Play it again.
From Regina Capel.
The race to replace the Prime Minister is on, and global jet setter Mark Carbon Tax Carney is leading the field. While
This is
hardworking
good.
families struggle with the cost of living, Carney's been busy cozying up to Liberal Party elites in luxury rooms far away from the everyday struggles of hardworking Canadians. So the Finance Committee has called Carney to testify so he can come clean with Canadians. The ball is now in his court. Will he have the courage to testify, or will he keep campaigning behind closed doors? Canadians have a right to know, how much will he increase the Prime Minister's carbon tax, or why he couldn't name 1 cent of inflationary Liberal spending he would cut. Canadians need to know why Carney works for an investment firm that has $20 billion invested in the PRC. Is it because he can make bigger profits thanks to Beijing's lack of environmental and
You
labor
bet he
standards?
does.
Carbon tax Carney attacks Canada's oil and gas sector when he needs to earn a vote, but his company invests billions in oil and gas projects in other countries when he needs to earn a buck. All this to say, if the next Liberal leader wants to campaign for the job, the least he can do is come clean with Canadians and show up and testify.
Well, I should mention, everybody, please like this broadcast, like the station right now if you can, because we beat YouTube censorship. We beat it yesterday. We really did. Thank you.
Today to support this very important industry. I was born and raised in this steel town, and that's why I'm so proud that this government has consistently stood with steel workers in the steel industry. When I was first elected, the Algoma Steel was in bankruptcy protection. Tenaris Tubes had a handful of people working there, and the blame was squarely laid at the former government's feet for inaction on cheap dump steel. We turned things around. We introduced a new trade regime that has strengthened our steel industry from 2016 on. In 2024, in this year's budget, we've also announced the Border Services new Market Watch Unit to monitor unfair trade practices, increasing trade transparency, and helping the Canadian steel industry remain.
So let's push those numbers up. Let's push the live viewers up. Let's beat Trudeau's censorship and YouTube censorship.
We will always have the steel industry's workers' backs. Thank you very much.
Oral questions.
Here we go.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Wacko Trudeau in today. I haven't seen.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister had a revelation. In an interview with the Halifax Chronicle Herald, he said that when people ask him for even more money from the government, he simply answers, and I quote, "The second they do so, inflation goes up by the same amount." Wow. Why had I not thought of that in the past? Spending too much money causes inflation. Incredible. Will he unveil even more revelations and say that budgets do not simply balance themselves? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
He's there.
Mr. Speaker, the problem with the Leader of the Opposition is that he didn't listen to the rest of the sentence in the interview that explains that we decided to invest in services, invest in support for Canadians, service that will help, like dental care. 2 million seniors have signed up to dental care. Over 100,000 have already obtained, since the 1st of May, dental care. Over 10,000 dentists have already registered and signed up, but the Conservative Party continues to be against dental care and to discourage dentists from registering. We are here to help Canadians.
Perhaps.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Now I understand the Prime Minister's logic. It causes inflation if the government spends money by directly sending checks to Canadians. But if they send it to fund red tape, it doesn't cause bureaucracy, apparently, Mr. Speaker, unless it comes with shattered promises and unrendered services, Mr. Speaker. It's true what the Prime Minister said. Finally, spending money that we don't have adds to the inflationary fire. Will he finally recognize that it's time for a common sense plan, dollar for dollar approach to repair the budget and reduce inflation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party voted against dental care in the name of inflation. They also voted against dental care for vulnerable people that haven't, for some of them, who haven't gone to the dentist for sometimes decades. Is that inflation? No, it's not. It's help for Canadians that are finding it very hard to pay for groceries, for example, who are concerned with the cost of living. We are sending direct aid, and the Conservatives are blocking it as much as possible. That's what it means to be here for Canadians.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has had a revelation. In an interview with the Halifax Chronicle Herald, he told how he responded to people asking for him to spend even more government money. And he said, and I quote, "As soon as you do that, inflation goes up by exactly the same amount." Right? Right. Why didn't I think of that? My goodness. Spending money you don't have actually causes inflation. In the middle of having epiphanies, has he also realized that budgets don't balance themselves?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party has been using that approach about concerns on inflation to stand against things like national food programs for kids or dental care for seniors. They have stood and objected against and even campaigned against dental care for seniors over the past many months. But we've delivered to over 100,000 seniors of the 2 million who've already registered for dental care the support that they hadn't gotten in years or even decades. But he stands against it with some made-up excuse around inflation when delivering services delivers for Canadians.
Made-up excuse around inflation?
Leader of the Opposition.
He calls his own words a made-up excuse, Mr. Speaker. You can't make this stuff up. He said that when people ask him, can you send us more benefits or send us an extra $1,000 a month? Well, he responds, as soon as you do that, inflation goes up by exactly the same amount. Right?
Right. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, that is exactly why over the past years we've been focused on bringing down inflation by supporting Canadians, and it is working. For the past 4 months, Mr. Speaker, inflation has been down in the Bank of Canada target range, while we continue to increase supports for Canadians, increase dental care for Canadians with Conservatives that campaigned against, supports for senior supports for young people, increased investments in childcare, bringing childcare fees down to $10 a day. These are the investments we're making that do not add to inflation, but add to Canadians' well-beings as they're making ends meet. That's what we stand for, Mr. Speaker.
What the hell do you stand for? You didn't make any sense.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, he finally, for once, thought about monetary policy. He said, as soon as you spend more, inflation goes up by exactly the same amount. Right. And he is right for once. But repeating the same costly promises that he has already broken does not change that fundamental monetary rule. So will the Prime Minister acknowledge that, yes, the economy is about numbers, that people pay their rent in numbers, their gas in numbers, their groceries in numbers, and that the numbers are too high?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
There's a fundamental difference in perspective between the Conservatives and this Liberal government. The
macroeconomic situation of Canada is one of the best in the G7, one of the best in the world. And the independent credit rating agencies continue to give us AAA scores. The federal government is doing well, but Canadians need support. So we are choosing to deliver supports to
Heck is
Canadians
that?
with this solid fiscal position. Dental care, a national food policy, national disability benefits, help for housing and investments in the kind of supports for Canadians that he has stood against every step of the way, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly.
That is not me, by the way,
Mr.
whoever that
Speaker.
is.
In order to put an end to the terrible violence in the Gaza Strip, will the government
That's the brief.
reiterate Canada's commitment to calling for a ceasefire and a food and humanitarian convoy to Gaza? But will it also support the Arab League in its creation of an international peacekeeping force?
What the hell does a bloc get involved in foreign affairs for? Poilievre is a bloody provincial party. They have no authority to act as a sovereign state, and they're not interested in the sovereign state called Canada. What a bunch of idiots.
Violence happening in Gaza through the
Trudeau will drive
devastating
you nuts.
actions of the Israeli army.
Yeah, please hit the like button,
in
folks.
Rafah,
We're
for
being
example.
hit by YouTube again today.
As we have done since December, we
I know,
continue
you
to call
folks
for
are
a ceasefire.
fantastic.
We're asking that there be a significant increase in humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza. And we're working with our partners and allies and friends in the region to establish a process through towards a two-state solution with a safe and recognized Palestinian state. Yes, we're working in that direction, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't have to say yes or that he agrees. I would like to ask him a question nonetheless. Does he recognize that short-term peace or sustainable peace in Gaza will require the intervention of an international peacekeeping force, so that there is a wall between the terrorists of Hamas and the Israeli government? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for months now, we have worked with our G7 allies and other democracies in the world. We have also been working with partners in the region, the government of Egypt, the government of Jordan, and other countries with which we are working in order to try and find a solution, a way to be back on track towards a two-state solution that would be approved, that were rejected by Hamas and Netanyahu. We have to continue to work towards a two-state solution as rapidly as possible, and we'll continue to do that work in this direction because it's necessary to do so.
The honourable member from Burnaby South.
The women and children killed in Rafah cannot be forgotten. We can't look away. And while the leader of the Conservative Party is a cheerleader for the brutal Netanyahu government, this Prime Minister is offering little more than thoughts and prayer. He can take action right now. He could impose a two-way arms embargo. He could sanction Netanyahu's war cabinet. So will the Prime Minister take concrete action today, or will he keep on walking away?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are horrified by the civilian deaths caused by the Israeli strikes in Rafah. We need to see an end to the violence, to the humanitarian tragedy ongoing, which is why we are continuing to put pressure on the Israeli government to cease its military operations in Rafah, why we're calling for more humanitarian aid to get in, why we've been calling for a ceasefire since December, Mr. Speaker, including in votes at the UN, and we will continue to. We need to see more humanitarian aid in. We need to see hostages released. We need to see an end to this violence and a path towards a two-state
The
solution.
NDP is doing such a
again.
good job propping up the Liberal government. They should have at least one cabinet minister in there. I mean, they're doing such a great job of keeping the Liberal government alive,
not take the
keeping the
floor when they have not
Speaker
been
in.
recognized by the Speaker. The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Embargo now.
Oh, get off it. There he is wearing the same suit again every day.
Netanyahu's strike on Rafah. But when asked what he intended to do about it, he ran away. What he could do today is impose an arms embargo and sanction Netanyahu's war cabinet. Will this Prime Minister finally act to save lives, or will he simply continue to save himself?
You know, there he goes,
The
pretending
Right
to be an
Honourable Prime
opposition
Minister.
leader again.
Mr. Speaker, from the very beginning, we have worked actively to promote and establish peace and humanitarian aid. We are in amongst the biggest per capita donors to UNRWA, and we will continue to be here to help through humanitarian assistance, through medical help, and through food aid. And we will do the work that is necessary to continue down a path towards a two-state solution, despite the efforts of the Netanyahu government in ruining every prospect of a two-state solution. We will continue to be here. We will continue to find peace.
The NDP, of course, backed Speaker Greg Burgess to stay in the job.
Because of this Prime Minister's incompetence and the incompetence of the Liberal Mayor of Montreal, the time one has to wait for a building permit has doubled and rents have tripled. In Ville-Marie, the Mayor of Montreal's municipal riding, it takes 540 days to get a building permit. What is the Prime Minister doing? He simply gives her $95 million more to build bureaucracy and red tape. Why not impose financial penalties on municipal politicians who are hindering the construction of housing?
Can somebody tell me what TVTY means?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, instead of targeting elected officials, as the Leader of the Opposition is doing, we are choosing to invest to reduce bureaucracy and red tape, to accelerate processes. And that is exactly what we are doing through our 179 agreements to accelerate housing that we've signed with municipalities from coast to coast. This to deliver more housing more quickly. These are agreements that the Leader of the Opposition wants to simply cancel, and that will not help building faster housing, and that's not what we saw when he was Minister for Housing. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Housing cost half of what it does now. The Prime Minister not only doubled the cost of housing, he also disperses amounts to build more red tape that blocks construction. I have a common sense plan in Bill C-356 that will be voted upon this afternoon, that will cut taxes on construction, that will sell federal land and buildings to build housing, and that will also give significant bonuses to municipalities who streamline housing more rapidly. Will they vote for more housing? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have a concrete approach. We work hand in hand with municipalities and provinces. We invest in building more housing in the most comprehensive and ambitious way. Contrary to this member, when he was Minister for Housing under the Harper government, he built 6 affordable housing units for Canadians. And that's not the kind of approach that will help. The plan that he's proposed is very, very weak, according to experts that have analysed it. We have a concrete plan, and he refuses to invest to help Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
When I was a minister, we built close to 200,000 housing and apartment units.
Currently only
the
6, Pierre.
Was $973, half of what it is today. He works in partnership with municipal officials to double the cost of building a house. My common sense approach will increase housing, will give a bonus to municipalities that go beyond an increase of 15% in building houses. If not, they'll be penalized. Why should we not pay for results? Are they going to pay for more bureaucracy or for more results? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Bureaucracy is what the Liberals pay for.
Mr. Speaker, we are undertaking efforts to put an end to the housing crisis through an achievable and ambitious plan. Now let's just talk about
undertaking is the right verb when describing what the Liberals are doing to Canada.
Bill was a very flaccid approach to housing with many loopholes. That's why the opposition leader did not want to have a debate on his non-plan. He doesn't want to debate it because he lost 800,000 apartment units when he was Minister for Housing, and he only built 6 affordable housing units.
Oh, Corey, that's a rough cut.
I would like to ask all members to please not take the floor when I've not been recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
When I was housing minister, we built almost 200,000 houses and apartments, with the average rent being $973 for a one-bedroom apartment. But this prime minister is not worth the cost of housing, which has doubled 9 years after he and the NDP took power. What is he doing about it? He's giving $500 million to the mayor of Toronto, who has just jacked up home building taxes by 20%. Why does he reward local government gatekeepers that block the homes that Canadians need?
Sylvain, you're dead on about
We
this.
are leading on the efforts to solve
I'll say
this
more about
housing
this in a minute.
crisis with a plan that is ambitious and concrete. Meanwhile, after having his housing bill panned by experts as being, quote, exceptionally weak response to the housing crisis riddled with loopholes, the Conservative leader chose to repeatedly delay debate in this House since October on his bill. That's because he just doesn't care. When he was minister, he lost 800,000 affordable apartments and only built 6 affordable homes.
He's repeating that falsehood as well. How would you lose 800,000 apartments? What the hell is he talking
The
about?
Honourable Leader of the
They
Opposition.
just repeat
Actually,
lies.
the number is closer to 200,000, but the prime minister's never been very good with numbers, right? So
No, he's pretty
the
bad
prime
with
minister
numbers.
cites the government-funded bureaucrats and liberal academics to bolster his approach, which has doubled housing costs in just 9 years, partly because he gives money to municipalities and politicians like Winnipeg, where they just blocked 2,000 homes right next to a government-funded transit station built for those homes. Why won't he accept my common sense plan to give bonuses to those municipalities that permit more building and penalties to those that stand in the way?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we criticize rightly the Leader of the Opposition, who, when he was housing minister, only built 6 affordable homes
get
for
off
Canadians
it.
across the country.
6.
But it is
That is so
understandable, Mr.
ludicrous.
Speaker, because he was part of a government that took the federal government out of the building of affordable housing. They chose that the federal government had nothing to do with housing across the country. That's why for 10
Yes,
years,
Trudeau's tie is
non-involvement
crooked.
of
It's
the federal
crooked every day.
government,
He can
that
never get
leaves
his tie
echoes.
straight.
We've stepped up and invested in communities, invested in partnerships. We're getting the homes built. We're delivering for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Sure. Housing costs have doubled since he became prime minister. They were half when I was housing minister. Housing costs have gone up 40% faster than wages, a bigger gap than in any other G7 country. Why? Because he's building bureaucracy and not homes. Why won't he accept my common sense plan to require municipalities permit 15% more building, sell off 6,000 federal buildings to build homes, and cut taxes so builders can build?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just like when he was housing minister, his solution is to do less to help Canadians, to invest less in supporting municipalities as they build housing, to get out of the way and leave Canadians to fend for themselves. That is his political philosophy. It is a political philosophy. It's just not the one that supports Canadians. It's not the one that is delivering for Canadians as we step up with the most ambitious and achievable housing plan this country has ever seen. We will continue to be there to invest in housing accelerators. We'll be there to continue to take the GST.
You can't take this man seriously.
We will be there for Canadians.
You can't take this man seriously.
The Honourable Member for Belleville-Chambly.
Oh, the
In
blockhead.
March, the NDP had a motion adopted in support of Palestine. It was a rather balanced one, and the Liberals.
Anyway, the blockhead's
decided not.
talking. I want to refer back to a comment from my friend Sylvain Robert. Yes, we need to make peace with Russia. We need to stop sleepwalking towards a nuclear war. over Ukraine. Ukraine is a corrupt, despotic government. This war is not about saving democracy because there's no democracy in Ukraine. Ukraine cannot join NATO. And it's that simple. And dunderheads like Justin Trudeau and dunderheads like Joe Biden don't get that. How would the United States feel about Mexico joining some alliance with Russia? How would the United States have felt about Mexico or Canada joining the Warsaw Pact? I mean, this is ludicrous. And the United States has been gobbling up through NATO all of these Eastern European countries, and they literally think they can camp out on Russia's doorstep without any complaints. We need to get Biden or whomever is his spokesperson these days talking with Putin to stop this bloody war, because we are walking into a nuclear war and a catastrophe right now. Things are worse right now than they were in October 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it's amazing that you hear leaders across the world, across Europe anyway, talking about it's no big deal having a war with Russia. Yeah, it might be a nuclear war, but hey, so what? We have lost our sense of reality and our sanity. Anyway, back to question period.
Safe and recognized Palestinian state next to an Israeli state that is safe and recognized. That's the only way. Our position for a long time has been that this recognition of a Palestinian state needs to come at the end of this process. We today recognize that it's not necessarily at the end of this process that we will recognize the Palestinian state. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Not a chance. That's what the president of the Residential Construction Council said when asked if this prime minister
sure wants to stick to housing today, doesn't he?
Build 3.9 million homes by 2031. So let's hear it from the prime minister. To reach that target, he'd have to build 550,000 homes per year. So yes or no, will the prime minister hit the target of 550,000 homes this year? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, Canada is facing a housing crisis, and we need to take real action towards it, which is what we've done with the most ambitious and achievable plan that this country's ever seen. But, Mr. Speaker, that's not to say we haven't had housing crises before, and it's not to say we haven't solved housing crises before. At the end of World War II, there was a need for massive new housing, and Canada stepped up and got that housing built. Indeed, when the boomers came of age, there was a need for massive housing.
And the private sector fulfilled that need after the Second World War.
Across the country for boomers. We are doing that now as we build housing.
The Honourable Leader of
Not
the
a blowhard and idiot.
That was a wonderful history lesson, except it didn't answer the question. He promised he'd lower housing costs in 2015. He doubled them. He promised he'd double home building. It actually went down and is still dropping. But now he's promising 3.9 million brand new homes by 2031. That means he'd have to build 550,000 this year and every year. So once again, will the Prime Minister keep his promise to build 550,000 homes this year? Yes or no?
We know he can't do that. He's nowhere close.
Mr. Speaker, the leader opposite speaks of 2015. Well, we took office with a commitment to get this government back, the federal government back in the business of building housing. We launched a national housing strategy in 2017 that put 2.5 million Canadians into new or refurbished homes, and we've continued to invest ever since. We're building homes on public lands. We're converting underused federal offices into homes. We're taxing vacant lands to incentivize construction. We're building apartments, bringing rents down with top-ups to the apartment construction loan program. We're scaling up modular housing. We're launching Canada Builds to lead a Team Canada effort to build more homes and more, Mr. Speaker.
The question was not how quickly he could read off talking points written for him by his staff. The question was whether he's going to break yet another housing promise. He Remember, he promised he'd lower housing costs. He doubled them. He promised he'd double the number of homes built. They went down.
Thank
Now
you,
he's
Maureen,
promising
for that
3.9 million
advice. I will
new
do that.
homes by
I do take
2031.
advice from
That
people.
means 550,000
I don't know everything.
new homes this and every year. Will he keep that promise? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition's criticism is there's too many measures in our housing plan. Housing should be solved by a simple one-size-fits-all solution, according to the Leader of the Opposition. That's perhaps how he managed to build only 6 affordable homes when he was Minister of Housing. Because yes, we have a broad range of initiatives that are delivering on housing, like topping up the Housing Accelerator Fund with $400 million, a new $6 billion Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund to help communities build. We're leveraging transit funding to build more homes. We're launching a housing design catalog.
We're moving up.
We're incentivizing more skilled trade workers.
What a load of rubbish.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's announcing a catalog, everybody. Hey, right on. Give him a round of applause. Come on, give him a round of applause. You can't afford a home. You might end up in a tent. Your rent is doubled, but hey, you've got a brand new catalog. Mr. Speaker, the question was, will he build 550,000 new homes, yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
That's a pretty good
He
exchange.
mentioned the history lesson. Well, if he was housing minister, he should have known that the way we solved the housing crisis after World War II was by putting forward a catalog of homes that builders could access to build extremely rapidly right across the country. So yes, that's one of the measures we're bringing back. And his mockery of concrete initiatives that are going to deliver for Canadians is exactly what's wrong with his approach. He'd rather mock and insult than actually roll up his sleeves and get solutions built for Canadians.
Order. The Honourable Member from London Fanshawe.
Report after report has shown that women who serve in the Canadian Armed Forces are not safe, and consecutive governments have failed to act urgently.
Oh, this is nonsense. What a ridiculous comment to make.
Sexually attacked at their military colleges in the last 12 months. Justice Arbour was clear. Now is the time to end the toxic culture that exists within these colleges. Women deserve a safe place to train and to learn. When will the Prime Minister act to protect women who are the future generation of the Canadian Armed Forces?
What a stupid question.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we absolutely agree that the culture at the Royal Military College needs to change.
What the hell do you know about the culture at the Royal Military College?
The Canadian Military College Review Board last year to enable meaningful culture change at these institutions. No RMC cadet and no CAF member should ever be subject to harassment, discrimination, or misconduct. The Minister of National Defence will not hesitate to implement the necessary changes to protect cadets
totally
and all officers.
destroy the Royal Military College. That's what you'll do.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie.
Oh, I hate
Mr.
this.
Speaker, did you find last summer difficult? We remember the forest fires, the evacuations, the smoke in the sky, the heat waves, but hold on to your hats because the summer of 2023 may
Oh, it's going to be
well have
worse,
been the
is
most
it?
pleasant for the next 20
What
years.
an idiot. Look at these
Summer
fat
to
cat
come will even be
socialist
hotter.
commies
The number of
standing up asking these
suffocating days will
stupid
multiply, as
questions
will heat
based on
waves and heat
complete
domes. The
falsification.
climate crisis is real.
The country is not
Vulnerable
on fire,
populations and
you
seniors are
halfway.
suffering. Will the Prime Minister get it
The
through his head
NDP
that
should be on
continuing
fire.
to support the oil industry is madness? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will continue with the most ambitious fight against climate change that Canada has ever seen. And we are delivering results. Excluding the pandemic, Canada's emissions have never been as low in 25 years. And we are the first federal government to achieve its emissions targets. It is possible to reduce emissions, to fight climate change, and to support Canadians and grow the economy at the same time. That's what we're going to continue to do to build a stronger, greener future for all Canadians.
The honourable member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, thanks to the work of our government, Ontario is a leading manufacturing hub for the 21st century. Companies from across the world are choosing Ontario to build high-tech factories that are focused on delivering real climate action. The world knows that the economy of tomorrow needs to be built on sustainability because climate change is real. Evidently, the Conservative Party did not get the memo.
This is a softball, by the way. We can all hear that one coming.
Ontario, a global leader in electric vehicle production.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the whole world is embracing an economy based on renewable energy and clean techs. The member for Vaughan Woodbridge is right. Thanks to our bold investments, Ontario is now a global leader in EV production. We have the #1 EV battery supply chain in the world, thanks to investments from companies like Honda, Stellantis, and Volkswagen. These are thousands
you can't
of
tell.
jobs and billions of dollars invested in Ontario that the Conservative Party is opposing
What
for
a
no good reason.
crock of
Shame
shit
on
that
them,
is.
Mr. Speaker.
Oh, I guess it gets more maddening the longer this idiot's on his feet. This is the first time he's been there for most of the question
A
period.
shocking article in La Presse says that children escorted by police to leave daycares because of homeless people and injection sites next to them. I'm quoting the director of the daycare. It's not normal to have to walk through with policemen around a daycare. Why?
No, it's not
With
normal.
the support of the Bloc, is this Prime Minister putting our children in danger by allowing violent repeat offenders take drugs on our streets? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, nurses, hospital personnel, and all patients and Canadians should be able to feel safe in their workplaces and in hospitals. This is our government has supported $1 billion in the healthcare system to make sure Canadians have access to the best healthcare possible. The difference between us and the Conservative Party is that while they seek to criminalize those who are most vulnerable, drug addicts, we are rolling up our sleeves and working at all levels of government to resolve this crisis.
He's rolling up his sleeves again.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker, he didn't hear the question. It was in terms of daycares. Yes, because of the decriminalization in BC, nurses had to breathe in crack and meth fumes. But now I'm talking about Montreal, where his policies led to the liberation of violent criminals and drugs in the streets next to a daycare. Once again, my question, why is the Bloc and the Liberals, why are they not accepting our common sense plan to eliminate drugs and put criminals in prison? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, what the Conservative leader is proposing is a step back to policies of the Harper years, which failed in the fight against drug addiction. And even one of the government's Harper advisors recognizes that it was a clear failure. We're going to continue to be here to make sure, assure security for everyone, including for children in daycares, with a compassion-based approach, health-based approach, and keeping people safe. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Many Canadians want to go back to the days when children didn't need police officers at their daycares, Mr. Speaker. But after 9 years, the Bloc Liberal government is not worth the cost. The Bloc voted for $500 billion in inflationary bureaucratic spending and centralizing spending. This has caused 60% of consumers to say that they are in stress. When will the Bloc change its tax and inflationary spending on the backs of Quebecers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader has just explained that his approach is austerity. Austerity for a government that would make it hard for people, we have chosen to invest to help Canadians. For example, help seniors with dental care. And since the beginning of May, there have been more than 100,000 seniors able to obtain dental care across our country. This is an initiative that helps keep costs down and take care of vulnerable people. And the Conservative Party will continues to vote against it and even tried to block it across the country. This is shameful.
Thank you, Shed Dwelling Hermit.
Leader of the opposition.
About austerity, well, I think that the Bransfield family of 4 in Calgary can tell him all about austerity, because that's what they're living right now because of his housing hell, his carbon taxes, and his inflation. They said close.
Right on, Jacob.
We're having to choose between paying a bill or getting food, and that can be really hard. It makes things really difficult. And I just don't see an end in sight. Will the Prime Minister accept our common sense plan to axe the tax, fix the budget, build the homes, so that the Bransfield family and so many others can eat, heat, and house themselves?
Earl, watch the beginning of the broadcast. The WHO agreement has failed.
I disagree with the Leader of the Opposition, who wants to take away the Canada carbon rebate checks that arrive 4 times a year in the bank accounts of the Bransfield families. Indeed,
Never seen one.
8 out of 10 Canadians, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, are
Yeah, like 2 years ago he said that?
Canada carbon rebate as we fight climate change with the price on pollution. 8 out of 10 Canadian families from coast to coast in the jurisdictions where the carbon price
am I being suppressed today?
are better off. That includes, most likely, the Bransfield family, and we will continue to be there for them.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Let's not be mistaken.
Mark, I heard that too, yes.
Respect for the state of Israel, and
we are headed towards a global war. There's no question about it.
Ready to support the ICG and the ICC to adhere to international law and help all peoples who could be subject to arrest on Canadian territory? And is he ready to apply the Canadian sanctions regime to Israelis who openly commit crimes against humanity in the Gaza Strip? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Let's watch Trudeau squirm.
Canada supports the independent work of the ICJ and the ICC. We are here to support the process and to ensure that everyone follows international law, including the rulings of these courts. We are here to support processes multilaterally to make sure that international law is
hi,
adhered
Candy
to.
Cane. Nice to see you
We
back.
are a country of rule of law, and we will remain so. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has announced a bunch of principles that seem very interesting, but never seems ready to accept terms and adopt and put forward cooperation with our allies, countries that have political will and policies that will help force Israel to end the violence in Gaza. Can he stop just giving us empty words and take action? We've just sent 10 proposals to do this. The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, if we want to respect international law and the rule of law, we have to respect the work done by institutions that were created to support it and defend it. And yes, we do support these institutions, but we're not going to jump stages to declare an outcome or decisions of these courts. On the contrary, we are going to wait for them to do their work, because this is what international law hinges on.
Right on, Candy Cane.
After 9 years, the Bloc Liberals aren't worth the cost. The Bloc has not only voted for $500 billion in appropriations that are centralizing, bureaucratic, and inflationary, but they want to radically increase taxes on gas and diesel for Quebecers in the regions. Unlike the Conservatives, who want to cut taxes, we are proposing to give a tax vacation for Quebecers on gas and diesel. Will the Prime Minister accept my common sense plan to reduce gas by 10 cents a litre for this summer? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The Conservative leader has a problem. His messages don't reach Quebec. Quebecers don't want to hear his ideas taking a step back in the fight against climate change.
Oh, that'll
It's
upset him.
something that Quebecers understand very well. So his solutions are attacking the Bloc or Quebec members or Quebecers themselves to try to take steps back in the fight against climate change. It will fail because the Conservative leader does not understand Quebecers and does not understand, in fact, most Canadians that know that climate change is real and we need to tackle it.
No, most Canadians are sick to death
The
of hearing
Honourable Leader of
about
the
climate
Opposition,
change.
Mr. Speaker, when Conservatives were in power, the Bloc was almost eliminated because we reduced government and allowed Quebec to have autonomy. Quebecers were in charge of their destiny, but they have centralizing powers and policies, and that is why these two parties are cooperating together. Will he finally accept to unite the country with a federal government that is smaller so we can have Quebec and Quebecers that are stronger? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if he knew history, he'd know that the Bloc has existed because of the Conservative Party. But let's put this aside, Mr. Speaker, to underscore the reality that we'll always be here to defend Quebecers. We'll always be here to work.
Oh, what we have a little disruption here.
Order,
My
please.
Lord. What did y'all think about Greg Fergus staying a speaker?
I would ask the member.
You believe the
For
NDP are
Marco
so hopelessly
Sorry.
lacking in any ethical
No,
guidance
not that member.
that they would vote with the Liberals to
ask the
keep
member
this son of a bitch
to
in
continue
this
their
position of power
discussions
when he is
behind
not
the curtains, please.
in any
I
way
will ask the Prime Minister to start again from the
up for
top.
the job.
Mr. Speaker, we've just seen, finally, after months, the Conservative caucus in Quebec wake up and finally talk. The reality is that when we talk about the environment, the Conservatives in Quebec say nothing. When we talk about the rights of women, the Quebec Conservatives say nothing. And
What the hell is he
we
talking
have
about?
seen shameful behavior from the Conservative caucus in Quebec, from the Conservatives, because they refuse to stand up for Quebec values. They tackle other Quebec
Well, they
members.
got
This
the
is
son of a
shameful. They
bitch
should
really angry
apologize
about
to
this.
all Quebecers.
If only Trudeau can talk about federalists in Quebec, I think I'm going to cry. What an excuse for a human being. What a poor excuse for a human being.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, he has just gone off the rails. He's lost control. He is so angry. Why? Because he has just learned that Quebecers, the Quebec Liberals, are turning their backs on him. Why? Because he has there's a common sense Conservative team that will cut taxes, build homes, fix the budget, and stop crime. Why not accept this? There's still time to accept this common sense plan. Give people a tax break so Quebecers can have a tax-free vacation. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. True, Mr. Speaker, sometimes I do stand up as a Quebecer to defend the values of my nation, of my country. These values as a Quebecer and a proud Canadian. We want to defend the environment, tackle climate change, protect the rights of women. Yes, I will always be passionate when it's time to defend fundamental rights for Canadians. I'm here to do this. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party continues to propose Quebecers a step back, and in terms of climate change, they're denying it. They're taking a step back in terms of the rights of women's. That's not what Canadians and other Quebecers want. I'd like to apologize to the member of Marc Aurel Fortin. It wasn't the honourable member. Mr. Speaker, this government knows that climate change isn't just necessary for the future of the planet. It's also how Canada stays competitive. Last year, $2.4 trillion was invested in creating our net zero economy. Can the Prime Minister highlight some of the steps the government is taking to attract clean investment to Canada? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his question. The reason the world is adopting a greener economy, well, because Canada remains competitive, because we're investing billions in clean tech.
Yes, it's called the softball question,
Companies are building new
Katrina,
factories and
they are
creating thousands of
agonizing to
well-paying
listen
jobs
to.
in Quebec
These
and across the
annoyingly
country.
cloying
The Conservative leader
questions
doesn't have
from
a climate
somebody
plan and therefore
who got
has
the
no
script
economic
about
plan.
30 minutes
While
before
him and the
question
Conservative
period and
caucus
said,
try
read this.
to bring Canada back
It
to the
is
Stone
really
Age,
annoying.
we're remaining focused on a stronger, greener economy for all generations. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. But of course, the NDP is keeping this costly prime minister in office for another year and a half. Well, people starve and are forced to live in tents. Those Canadians who've been able to hold on to their homes, they can't afford a vacation, but maybe a staycation. So we're asking today that the Prime Minister vote for a motion we will introduce tomorrow, which will give Canadians a 35-cent a litre gas tax break until Labor Day. Will the Prime Minister axe the taxes so Canadians can have a staycation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party is proposing to eliminate the Canada carbon rebate. This is a rebate that arrives 4 times a year in the pockets of Canadian
And the carbon tax, you idiot.
Experts, economists, and the parliamentary budget officer puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadian families in the jurisdictions in which it applies. This is more money in people's pockets while we fight climate change with the most effective plan against climate change Canada has ever seen. This is what the Conservative leader continues to rally against: affordability and climate fighting.
What a moron.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Of course, the Prime Minister is doing neither. After 9 years, the NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, and neither is his carbon tax, which the parliamentary budget officer finds costs more to 60% of Canadians than they get back in phony rebates. Mr. Speaker, going into the summer, the Prime Minister plans to hike taxes again. Canadians need a break now more than ever. Can he put aside his wacko ideology long enough to give Canadians a break by axing all the taxes on fuel for summer vacation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's not ideology to understand that fighting climate change and growing the economy while putting money in people's pockets is a good thing, because that's exactly what this government has done. Excluding the pandemic, our emissions are now the lowest they've been in 25 years because of our plan that prices pollution and puts more money back in the pockets out of 8 of 10 Canadian families. The fact that he refuses to understand that you don't have a plan for the economy if you don't have a plan to fight climate change is yet another proof of the fact that his approach is not going to succeed for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Trudeau doesn't have a plan for the economy.
62nd out of 67 countries on fighting climate change. This after he's brought in a 17-cent a liter carbon tax, a tax that he wants to nearly quadruple up to 61 cents a liter if, God forbid, he's ever elected. We have 2 million people lined up at food banks, a quarter of Canadians skipping meals because they can't afford food. 1 in 4 adults missing meals so they can feed their kids. For God's sakes, why won't he give Canadians a summer vacation from all his taxes and accept our common sense plan?
Right on, Candy Cane.
The Conservative leader isn't focused on affordability. He's focused on ending action on climate change. If he was so concerned about the price of gas, he'd have a conversation with his friend, the Premier of Alberta, who just raised the gas tax by 13 cents a liter. Experts agree, including Premier Smith, that Canadians receive back more money from the Canada Carbon Rebate than they pay with the price on pollution. We are putting a price on pollution and putting more money back in the pockets of the middle class and people working hard to join it. That is joining the efforts we're doing on affordability, like dental care, like support for childcare.
And you're a member of the upper class, and you shouldn't be. And you have no conception of how people have to work.
Our Atlantic Accords bill will allow for the development of offshore wind projects. By investing in renewable energy, we are investing in a future for Atlantic Canadians that is green and prosperous, one where we fight climate change and create
can't
jobs.
keep up with that.
The Conservatives are getting in the way of Atlantic Canada by opposing C-49. What is government doing to ensure that Atlantic Canada can contribute
What a
to the green
stupid
economy?
softball question that one was. Just get that one, did you, ma'am?
Honourable Prime Minister.
I thank the member for St. John's East for her advocacy on behalf of all Atlantic Canadians. We're equipping Atlantic Canadians with the tools they need to thrive in the economy of tomorrow. Offshore wind alone is expected to bring $1 trillion of investment by 2040. There's no common sense in opposing good-paying, cutting-edge Atlantic Canadian jobs. This is yet another example of the Conservatives blocking middle-class jobs because of their backwards ideology. While Conservative politicians pen angry op-eds against investing in the Atlantic, we'll ensure Atlantic Canadians are not left behind.
The honourable member from Churchill-Kiwatinuk-Aski.
Mr. Speaker, here in northern Manitoba, we've seen the wildfire season start much earlier because of climate change. Frontline forest firefighters are giving it their all, but they can't do it alone. The military has had to help with firefighting
Climate
operations
change.
across the country
What
in the past.
nonsense.
But now military leadership is warning their capacity to help Canadians evacuate will be limited, calling that help wickedly wasteful. Let's be clear, we are facing a climate emergency. So if these domestic operations aren't a priority for our military, then what is? Can Canadians count on this government to call in the military when we need help?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am certain the member opposite did not mean to disparage the extraordinary women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces who
Oh, God, no, you didn't mean to say anything against your lovely government.
As they did all through last summer, as they will through this summer, where and when needed. But we also
But that is ridiculous. Using the military for your goddamn crazy forest fire started by your activist arsonists.
Floods, droughts, and wildfires. And we will
What a
continue to
moron,
need to
this
be
man.
there with the military, but also call on more resources from civil society and elsewhere to support in these times of emergency.
The honourable member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, we have learned very bad news in my riding this year. For many years, we've had a Canada Day party in Victoriaville involving many municipalities, but for a reason we don't know, the Minister of Canadian Heritage doesn't seem to be giving any funds to the Canada Day party organization, despite the fact that there's members of the business community involved and many others. On July 1st, there'll be no Canada Day party. What does the Prime Minister think of this? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm troubled by this information, and I will certainly follow up to see what we can do, because Canadians across this country should be able to celebrate our national holiday with all the festivities that we'll see in our communities. And I appreciate enormously that the member has brought this concern to my attention, and we will follow up with his office. This is the end of the question.
The honourable
Wow,
member
that came
from
awful quick, didn't it?
Montarville has a point of order.
Oh, thanks for watching today, folks. Frustrating at times, I know, but Poilievre really got Trudeau worked up over that, didn't he? He really got him worked up because Trudeau thinks he's the only federalist, if you can call Trudeau a federalist, because he sucks up to the bloc all the time. But he thinks he's the only so-called pseudo-federalist who can talk for Quebec, and don't think Poilievre can do that because he's not from Quebec like I am, Trudeau says. This is a sham government. It's question period's a sham. But it's nice to get together and watch it like this in a communal experience because it shows how bankrupt our federal system has become. It shows how bankrupt, how destitute the Trudeau government is and will remain because it has nothing more to offer except vacant talking points. It shows how we need a change in the federal government. And I'll tell you, I think that's going to be the Conservatives. Although my best political friend remains Maxime Bernier of the People's Party of Canada. But I know I have known Pierre Poilievre for over 20 years. I think he'll make a good prime minister. I think he'll make a hell of a better prime minister than Justin Trudeau. But I'm not here to carry water for any political party. But we need a change at the federal level immediately, if not. And if we can wait till October 2025, I hope the country can wait too. Because we are in serious straits with a madman named Justin Trudeau is in control of this country. And we need to get rid of that madman in the next election. If the Liberal caucus and cabinet doesn't do it for him, doesn't do it to him before that. Anyway, thanks for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow with more of the fun and excitement from Question Period. And thank you, everybody, for getting us past 25,000 subscribers yesterday. Your support is appreciated. You're a fantastic audience, and I love talking to you. Bye for now.